Hello, my name is Brooke Beaton. I am a first year student at the U of O, and I conducted this research this previous fall term while taking a research writing course, and it's really just grown my interest in the topic since then. And my topic is social media use, worsening anxiety and depression. And before I get started, I just wanted to touch on my research methods. It's fairly simple. I just reviewed and analyzed a multitude of articles, peer-reviewed journals, studies, and experiments on the topic, and used those to build and support my argument. So let's begin. Social media has really become a critical component of social interaction between individuals today, and technology has just dominated our society, and the internet can really just have consumers wholly invested in their mobile devices, intrigued by so much material. However, with this endless plethora of information comes unseen issues for the individual, specifically when it comes to their mental health. The science of persuasive design quietly plays a critical component between the smartphone, social media, and mental health issues. And compared to older generations that lived in a non digital world, mental issues have really just skyrocketed today. And so, my research is going to illustrate how dependency on smartphones and social media use is rewiring human brains and how this dependency really correlates to an increase in worsening mental health, especially anxiety and depression. And thus, I'm going to emphasize the importance of raising awareness about these issues for internet users. These smartphone and social media apps have really evolved dramatically since their introduction in the early 2000s. The smartphone is a mobile phone with a lot of the same characteristics as a computer, but it really reaches beyond the essential functions of texting, calling, and writing emails. And so the first basic smartphone was created in the early 1990s by IBM. And later on in 2004, 3G and the mobile camera phone were introduced, but it proposed not a lot of momentum when it came to social media. And this really took off though in 2007 when Apple came out with their own smartphone. So this is when the popularity of social media really took off. In an article by Rich Harity that I used while researching, he states that in 2007, smartphones accounted for only 20% of the mobile phone market. However, by 2012, 1 billion smartphones were sold, and by 2019, more than 80% of the US population owned smartphones. So iPhones have really just evolved past the simple task of making calls, texts, or emails, and social media has really just grown to dominate the mobile phone. And social networking has developed into social media because social networking was a very basic mean of communication where users would message other individual users who had common interests. But when it comes to social media, users can really post they can post a message to a larger audience, whether or not they have any common interests. So it really just opens up the door for a lot more engagement. And since the 2000s and even 2007, smartphones have continued to evolve and they have a lot of different functions such as playing music, gaming, navigation, and so much more. Um, However, there are a lot of different roles that go into this technological development field, and it can be quite invasive to the human brain. In one article that I studied, it was about an author who went to Silicon Valley and specifically the Stanford Lab of Design. And there, the scientists and engineers, they studied human behavior and operant conditioning in order to create really popular and compelling technology, such as the smartphone and social media apps. And operant conditioning is a learning process where a individual will make a voluntary action and then it's immediately followed by a consequence or a reward. So if it's followed by a reward, they will continue to repeat that behavior. And in this case, it's making social media posts or just engaging with social media apps. And so they call this field of persuasive design captology. Um, and so these can help creators make apps that are really tailored to you. And it becomes almost addictive for the user because they're able to study the dopamine reward system, which is a key controller of human behavior. And so if they understand its function and they can manipulate the weaknesses of this, then they can create apps that are really addictive for the user, but really successful for the creator. And so this invasive research can really just go undetected by the ordinary user, but it can really quickly take over their daily life. And so the research and design of habit-forming technology really easily facilitates psychological and physical addiction, which can be really similar to drugs and gambling. And so captology studies the human brain's reward system, especially the function of dopamine. And dopamine is a neurotransmitter that's associated with decision making and feelings of pleasure. And dopamine is released as a reward for pleasurable behaviors, and it prompts the individual to repeat them, which creates a system of positive reinforcement. And so human dopamine levels really rise when users make a social media post, or if they even like a post, receive a notification, or even just open the app or use it at all. So this really requires a very minimal effort by the user. So it's really likely for the individual to continue using these social media apps due to positive reinforcement and how accessible a feeling of happiness is for them. And so this booming design field has really made social media and mobile phones such an essential component of everyday lives. Most people feel like they can't survive without their phones on them at all times. I know I feel that way sometimes. And so the vast range of opportunities that these devices offer has really just created such a widespread dependency among so many people. And referencing back to the article by Rich Harity, he states that in 2012, the average amount of time spent on a mobile phone was 88 minutes, but that number jumped to 203 by the end of 2018. So we can only assume that this duration has only increased. So with this dependency comes a really great profit for tech engineers and these app creators, because their popularity and engagement continues to soar. So it becomes really unlikely for these companies to provide any type of helpful intervention for excessive use or addiction. And so dependency upon mobile phones and social media applications opens the door for so many consequences, especially when it comes to our mental health. Many studies have been conducted on the correlation between social media and mental health issues. And a really alarming statistic is that over 90% of young adults across the globe use the internet for social media. And social media allows individuals to feel connected to their peers, and they can post anything at any time, anywhere, basically anything they wish to. But this is accompanied by a lot of problems that can't be so easily seen. And so this plethora of information that is available to them through the internet and social media is so large and vast that it kind of exceeds the human's ability to grasp and process data. So this can create a lot of feelings of stress and fatigue. And this stress and fatigue can really further contribute to increased feelings of boredom, and the ability to focus and read has really been significantly impacted as social media users and most young adults become bored and distracted easily. And this makes the user a lot more prone to continue using these technologies to escape that feeling of boredom, whether or not they understand that it's contributed to using the phone in the first place. So a longer duration of social media and mobile phone use is correlated to increased mental health issues, especially anxiety and depression. And this is due to a multitude of consequences. So like I looked at one study about sleep quality, nighttime use, and those who use social media. And it looked at their well-being mentally and physically. And participants who use social media more at night and overall, as well as if they showed a larger emotional attachment, they end up experiencing poor sleep, low self-esteem, and consequently higher levels of anxiety and depression. And it's concluded that social media use, especially at nighttime, was very highly associated with poor sleep quality, which contributes to worsening well-being. And a really alarming statistic is that the rates of anxiety and depression in young people have risen by 70% in the last 25 years, in which the world became more digital with the introduction of the smartphone, the internet, and so on. And so it can really just be concluded that more prolonged social media use is accompanied by a lot more worse consequences that are contributable to anxiety and depression. And these also include low self-esteem, social comparison, vulnerability to cyberbullying, feelings of loneliness, and so much more. That's only to name a few. And these consequences of social media use really extend past the individual and can go into their environment and their interpersonal relationships. So, social media is often used as a coping mechanism or escape from one's stress and problems in the real world, just because of how much dopamine can be easily released. But this dependency and prolonged use can really lead to ignoring your real life relationships, your work or school responsibilities, and your physical health, which can then also exacerbate one's mental health problems. And this then causes the individuals to engage in social networking behavior even more as a way to relieve like their feelings of dysphoria. But then dependency and addiction to social media and the smartphone really just deteriorate the quality of one's life through unhealthy personal habits and the neglect of their own responsibilities. And it kind of just only leads to like temporary rewards and happiness. And so the accumulation of downsides associated with longer durations of social media really just creates an unhealthy mental state that can be really hard to escape. And like I spoke about before, sleep is so important when it comes to one's mental health, and it is so easy for social media use and just mobile phone use in general to disrupt that and lead to a multitude of consequences that can exacerbate mental health issues. And today's sharp increase in anxiety and depression can be subject to speculation when one considers the openness of mental health issues and how it's progressed in recent years. It seems like there's a lot more stressors than ever in today's society. If you consider the pandemic, a lot of political turmoil, social turmoil, and just social media use as well. And like I said before, studies have shown that rates of anxiety and depression in young people have risen by 70% in the last 25 years. However, though, structures of our society have changed and progressed in past years, including the topic of mental health. So, in the past, mental health was considered taboo and not really spoken about or treated right. Um, Usually, if someone were to report mental health issues, they could be undergoing lobotomies or sterilization, which was just really dehumanizing and just not the right approach at all. So people were um, less likely to report having any mental health issues. So today, mental health treatment has really dramatically improved, and also medical professionals are starting to consider social media use in the context of diagnosing mental health issues such as anxiety. And according to the World Health Organization, there has been a 13% rise in mental health conditions. So if we consider the consequences of social media as well as environmental stressors, because there are quite a few today, it can only be assumed that mental health issues, including anxiety and depression, have really increased, not only due to an increased likelihood of reporting these issues. And so today's youngest generations, millennials, Gen Z, and Gen Alpha, are the first to grow up in this digital world that we have. And they've been deemed digital natives because this is kind of the only thing that they've known, and it wasn't introduced to them later in life, unlike older generations. But with this can come a change in behavior and development and thinking that is going to translate into the future of society. And so the presence of this technology has really significantly impacted the development of our future leading generations. And this creates like a digital and social gap between older generations and younger generations today because they approach socializing in such a different way. And so it's kind of challenging to predict the shape of future society because a lot of these developmental impacts they can remain unseen until we reach the future. And so it's really important to kind of study the developmental differences in younger generations and older generations to kind of help predict this. And it's really crucial to just continue researching the psychological and physical impact of these technologies on the individual's well-being and development. And so It is really crucial to raise awareness about the consequences of social media dependency and helpful self-defense techniques in order to intervene in today's mental health crisis. And a worsening of mental health issues, especially anxiety and depression, are contributable to social media and smartphone dependency, as well as a long duration of use of these technologies. Unfortunately, like I said earlier, creators of these technologies, this is kind of this is one of their main goals when creating these. So it's really unlikely that they're going to create interventions for this addiction because they end up profiting off of it. So the individual user really needs to be aware of the physical, mental, and social downsides of social media use. And this will allow the user to be a lot more conscious about their decisions to engage rather than not knowing what is going on and giving into the persuasive design and their vulnerability to form an addiction. And so the best self-defense technique, amongst most of these studies, they concluded that the best thing to do is to just cut down on duration of use. And it was agreed that 30 minutes is the most optimal to avoid experiencing any of these downsides or exacerbating any existing mental or physical issues. And so by raising awareness about the negative impacts, this can also help to again, curve those downsides being experienced and then allow those individuals who do decide to use only reap the benefits. And so social media and the mobile phone really play a key role in our world today and offer such a large plethora of information for the individual to access, but this can lead to a lot of other issues such as overstimulation, poor sleep quality, loneliness, and more. And this increase in technology and internet use correlate to increases in mental and physical well-being issues such as anxiety and depression. And so it's really crucial for users to be aware of its downsides and be proactive in order to only reap the benefits. And it is so crucial to consider studying this relationship to predict our future, intervene in today's mental health crisis, and also to advance mental health treatment by using this information in the context of creating diagnoses for mental health disorders. And so raising awareness is going to help society and individual users as a whole make better decisions about their engagement. Thank you so much. Here are my sources that I use, and they are cited here. Again, thank you so much.